This past week, America marked the 24th anniversary of 9/11. While we honor the memory of that day, we cannot ignore its lingering repercussions. Chief among them is the Patriot Act. This law gave the U.S. government sweeping powers to bypass constitutional protections in the name of fighting terrorism. Warrantless surveillance, suspension of due process, and tighter controls on the financial system. Since 2001, the Patriot Act has shaped the financial world. It mandated strict KYC rules, tightened anti-money laundering laws, enforced unprecedented data sharing between banks, corporations, and the government. And now, the Treasury wants to use those same powers to go after Bitcoin privacy. FinCEN Director Andrea Gacki confirmed this week that the Treasury is finalizing the so-called Mixer rule. But the Mixer name is a misnomer. If enacted, this is a blanket ban on Bitcoin privacy itself. The rule would classify normal Bitcoin practices, like using single-use wallets, splitting transactions, exchanging between digital assets, and even adding simple delays for security as primary money laundering concerns. That means centralized intermediaries would be forced to block them. Developers of privacy software could face criminal liability, and U.S. citizens could lose the ability to transact privately on public blockchains. Industry leaders are sounding the alarm. Groups like Swan, 10x, and Samurai Wallet warned last year under the Biden regime that these measures would trample legitimate financial privacy and criminalize basic cybersecurity practices. But this is supposed to be a new era. The Trump camp has openly embraced Bitcoin. His sons say their own experience with being debanked is what led them down this path. And they're framing Donald as the crypto president, which makes it absolutely critical for this administration to strike down these anti-privacy measures before they become law. Because if not, the simple act of protecting your financial privacy could be enough to put you behind bars. Big stuff. But today, I am very grateful to be joined by our one and only. We've got the Hector Alvaro. Hector, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, Rob. How's your week treating you so far?
Doing good. Yes. Some sort of heavy news there, but we are here every Monday morning to break down Bitcoin News Weekly, our newsletter where we share all the biggest news in Bitcoin coming out every single Monday morning, straight to your inbox. So, Hector, before we hop into the headlines, let's talk about you for a second. Tell us about your story in Bitcoin, how you got started, and what you're doing in the industry today.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks for having me on the show. I enjoy watching the show every week when it comes out, so it's nice to be able to join you today. So my Bitcoin story is, I think, fairly typical. I heard about Bitcoin back in 2015, ironically at a Halloween party from a brother-in-law of a friend, and of course paid attention, but didn't really look into it any further. Just sort of wrote it off. Life was in the way. And then about a year later, heard a little more, got a little bit interested, and over the course of time, especially over the next few years, went down the rabbit hole, and of course got completely sucked in and committed to figuring out how to help others improve their lives with Bitcoin. And that's when I decided to get involved in the industry and started working with Lyle Hauser, our CEO, as we started building Rhino. And I also am an educator by training, so I also found ways to teach and educate as much as I can. So I also do some work with My First Bitcoin, which is a global Bitcoin education nonprofit.
No, that's amazing. You put out some content online, you explain subjects in Bitcoin, you break it all down. And so we will talk about, of course, Rhino later on in this episode. We will talk about Me Premier Bitcoin, the global Bitcoin education initiative that you're a part of. But before we get started today, what are you most bullish about in Bitcoin right now?
Well, what I'm bullish about is that, number one, that Bitcoin's rules continue to be enforced, regardless of what individual groups or governments or countries might want to try to impose on it. The fact that Bitcoin continues to stay decentralized and become more decentralized over time. The fact that the fixed supply continues to be enforced. That's what we love. That's the whole point of what Bitcoin is about taking control of money and by extension, time and control over people's lives out of the hands of individuals so that everyone has an opportunity to be in control of their financial futures. So as long as we've got TikTok next block, all of these other things are super interesting to talk about, and some of them are incredibly concerning. And as Jefferson is attributed to have said, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom or the price of liberty. So we need to keep an eye on things. But, Bitcoin being Bitcoin is the thing that gives us hope, gives me hope.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. We are over 914,000 blocks tall, right? Every 10 minutes, a new block comes out, cements the legacy of Bitcoin, makes an immutable ledger that cannot be changed. And we've got over a zettahash of hash rate to protect that ledger and make sure that it is immutable. So yes, let's go straight into the headlines today. Over here, of course, we are talking about Bitcoin News Weekly, the newsletter that comes out every Monday morning straight to your inbox, 7 a.m. Eastern. The title of today's issue is Patriot Act Reloaded. Treasury targets Bitcoin privacy. FinCEN director confirms plan to finalize the Mixer rule, labeling common Bitcoin privacy tools as money laundering risks. This is a huge deal, and we got to talk about this. We have a pro-Bitcoin president, a pro-Bitcoin administration, a Treasury secretary who's all about stable coins and crypto, thinking it's going to save his butt, make his job a lot easier of trying to sell this U.S. debt. But we got to make sure that using Bitcoin is still a free thing to do, that you're not being persecuted for just using single address wallets, right? You're not supposed to reuse your addresses, and that should not be a crime. So let's dive into the topics today. And we start off with our adoption section. So just off the top, some nice good news about Bitcoin adoption around the world. We'll go over to Africa. Chippercash, the African fintech giant serving millions, reports that over 50% of Bitcoin transactions on its platform now run on Lightning, one of the largest real-world deployments of the layer 2. Powered by Voltage. So yes, this is a cool story. Chippercash over here in America, we might not have heard of it or use it, but it is huge in Africa. Many people use it as their mobile fintech banking solution on their phone, and they offer Bitcoin, of course. And how do they do it? They use Lightning to send and receive Bitcoin. And this is huge because millions of people are using Bitcoin, and it's the fastest implementation of it, of course. And they don't even know that they're using Lightning, yet they are. And this is powered by our good friends over at Voltage. They provide a lot of Lightning infrastructure for some of the biggest Lightning projects around the world. So Hector, as somebody who works on a Bitcoin wallet that has Lightning capabilities, what do you think about this? And how easy is it to integrate Lightning these days? And do you think Lightning will be the standard around the world? And is it not already?
Well, I think it's getting there, and I think it's going to continue to expand. And the reason why I believe that is not just because I love Bitcoin, and so therefore I want Lightning to succeed. It's because better technologies always displace inferior technologies, whether it was light bulbs replacing candles or cars replacing horses or the internet replacing newspapers. When somebody comes out with a tool that is cheaper, faster, better, or all three at accomplishing a particular task, people are going to adopt it. Well, Lightning is cheaper to use than credit cards. You get faster settlement times. You don't have to deal with chargebacks. Many of your listeners will know all these things already. So all we have to do is continue to make people aware that there is a better option, help them see that it is easy for them to onboard and use this better tool. And it's terrific to see merchants also embracing this because they realize it's better for them. So, to quote one of my favorite quotes by noted Bitcoin hater Charlie Munger, right? Show me the incentives and I'll show you the outcomes. That's what's going to continue to happen because people use things that are better over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amazing thing about it, now we've gotten to such a point that people are using the Lightning Network without knowing it, right? They just have a user interface that says Bitcoin on it. They send their Bitcoin and it happens instantaneously. They don't even know that they have to wait 10 minutes to get it confirmed on the layer 1 blockchain. Just the Lightning transaction happens instantaneously and boom, the other person has the Bitcoin in their wallet. And that's what you need in this day and age. Expecting people to, especially have their first interaction with Bitcoin and expect them to understand that, oh, we need 10 minutes to have absolute finality here and settlement is sort of a little bit of a difficult thing to express when when someone's just onboarding onto Bitcoin, but having implementations like Chipper Cash, sending Bitcoin over Lightning, it's beautiful. And people will learn that then if they want to take self-custody of this Bitcoin, then those 10-minute settlement times are absolutely fine. It's totally worth it having complete sovereignty over your money to wait 10 minutes for that confirmation. Cool. Nice. So let's hop over to the next story today. We have Namecheap. So Namecheap is a place where you can buy and sell domain names. And the CEO came out last week saying that the company's largest ever domain sale, a sale of a oneword.com, of course, all those oneword.coms are extremely expensive, was sold for $2 million and was paid entirely in Bitcoin. That's pretty amazing. And even cooler is the fact that it was paid over BTC Pay Server, the open source payment method that people use, and merchants in particular. And Namecheap is running BTC Pay Server and just accepted $2 million in Bitcoin for its largest ever domain sale. What do you think about this news, Hector?
Yeah, I think it's just a continuation of the previous story. It's people choosing the best technology to get the job done. And somebody might say, well, geez, why would Namecheap want to do this? Well, just go back to the incentives. If you're talking about a $2 million transaction, let's say that they accepted that theoretically, via a credit card, right? Even though that'd be a high limit on your credit card. Well, if you're paying 3% for that transaction, that's $60,000. Well, why would you want to give away $60,000 if you can have something where you have the money in your account, final settlement, much more quickly? And if you're dealing with wire transfers or things like that, you're going to deal with delays, especially is this somebody who was paying for it internationally, and would that maybe have been delayed? So by eliminating all of the frictions and eliminating almost all of the costs, well, of course, if we were running Namecheap, we would want to do the same thing. So I think it's encouraging, again, that merchants as well as consumers realize that there is a better way to transmit value in many circumstances, whether it's for purchasing coffee in El Salvador or whether it's purchasing a $2 million domain on Namecheap.
Absolutely. And over in the comments, we've got Nima saying the best part is that the $2 million transaction probably cost less than $1 in transaction fees. And the confirmation was instant. So yeah, I mean, on a regular $2 million transaction, just think of all the middlemen, right, who want to get their little hands on it and take a little piece of that $2 million for not doing anything other than shuffling the money from one place to another. Here with the BTC Pay Server, they set it up. They're running their own node. They get that money directly sent to them via Bitcoin, and boom, it is theirs. They have to pay nominal amounts of a transaction fee, probably a couple dollars, to send that 2 million in Bitcoin, and then they can exchange the goods, right? And this is the future of commerce. This is why Bitcoin is the native currency of the internet. And I think we're going to see more and more big transactions happen in Bitcoin for all different kinds of things, from domain names to real estate, to sports teams. I'm sure we'll see that one day.
We're seeing it happen already. It's only going to grow as more people realize that it's a better way to accomplish the exchange of value.
Yes, absolutely. And so to round out our adoption section, we have something that is close to your heart, Hector. My First Bitcoin, Mi Primer Bitcoin, the Global Bitcoin Education Initiative, announces the 7th Educators Unconference happening this November in El Salvador during Bitcoin Week. At an unconference, attendees join, they pitch session ideas, and then the best ideas rise to the top, and they are organized into breakout discussions where people can go and contribute their own beliefs and ideas towards these education plans, right? So I would love for you to tell us more about what Mi Premier Bitcoin is doing, the history of it, and what it's like to attend an unconference.
Yeah, thanks. So Mi Primer Bitcoin, or My First Bitcoin, as some people know it, is a global education nonprofit that was started in 2021 in El Salvador by a gentleman named John Dennehy. And the idea was very, very, simple but powerful. And that was to provide, free and open source, unbiased, Bitcoin education to everyone globally. And they started in El Salvador, and little by little, as they produced, their education materials, the Bitcoin diploma, some of the other programs, of course, others started realizing, hey, this is a great, these are great tools that I can take, and instead of having to start from square one or from a blank page, now I can deliver these tools and this education, very simply and easily to the people in my community or at my school or at my organization. And very quickly, it started growing not only beyond El Salvador, but beyond South America and all over the world. Now there are, over 30 countries that have, Bitcoin, nodes, as they are referred to, are sort of like the organizations that are committed to delivering, sort of the Bitcoin diploma materials. There's now an online course. There's a Bitcoin for Businesses curriculum that has been developed. So the different flavors and tools to speak to different audiences about the benefits of Bitcoin for them and their organizations continues to expand. And then the unconference, that is to me, it's really emblematic of the spirit of Bitcoin itself, because rather than a traditional conference where sort of the organizers of the conference decide, okay, here is what we think people want to hear, we sort of flip that on its head and we say, okay, you know what, we're going to let the people who are going to come attend the conference, we are going to let them contribute to what is going to be the education and the information that is going to be shared there. So attendees can actually, pitch ideas for, for presentations and for conversations. And then the attendees of the conference, vote on the things that they want to hear the most. And then those discussions are scheduled and occur. So it's a really dynamic event. It's a very intimate type of event. This will be the third one in El Salvador. I was lucky enough to attend the last two. And so if you've not ever been to an unconference, they are having them now in other parts of the world as well. So they're expanding that beyond El Salvador. I encourage you to try to attend one. And there are now other organizations who are also taking this unconference style of get together and of sort of community event and applying that to their particular audiences. So if you've not been to an unconference and you've only been, let's say, to the big Bitcoin conference, I encourage you to find one because it's a completely different feel and it's a whole lot of fun, and it's a great way to meet people in a quieter, more personal setting.
Absolutely. So tell us, what kind of subjects are discussed in these breakout groups? What kind of ideas come up to and bubble up to the surface at an unconference?
It's interesting because it varies at every conference. So it might be things like open source tools and how they can be expanded. Things like BTC Pay Server that you were just talking in the last segment in the last news article. It could be things like different educational styles. I was at one last year that was headed up by a guy named Dushan, who runs a project down in Roatan. And he was talking about Bitcoin analogies, and all sort of the different, frameworks that people can put around different concepts in Bitcoin. And I learned a ton from that as an educator, just by hearing the way that he describes other, elements and technical details around Bitcoin for regular folks. So you really never know what you're going to get. It's very much a box of chocolates kind of approach, but it's always different. It's always interesting. And the great thing is you can then just sort of self-select and choose your own adventure and figure out where you think you're going to get the most value out of the information that's presented.
And it's just absolutely amazing how this has become a global movement, right? Born in El Salvador in 2021, John Denny just took it upon himself to try to organize this thing. And what's been beautiful is just to see all the different people from around the world make it their own, right? And contribute to the diploma program, contribute different worksheets and lesson plans. And tell us about that. I mean, I know that you helped work on a program for Bitcoin for organizations, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, this is very much a continuation of even the spirit of the unconference, right? So the Bitcoin diploma, which is the original traditional program that's been translated into dozens of languages in dozens of countries all around the world, really speaks sort of like that Bitcoin 101, that basic education for individuals and groups as a first step into understanding why Bitcoin is so powerful and why it's better money. But then, of course, some individuals within the organization said, I'm running into, organizations, executives, directors of, departments, divisions, different industries. And, it would really be useful if there was some content that was tailored to those kinds of organizations and to the different, use cases and challenges that organizations, especially middle and large organizations, might face, because a lot of them are still either ignoring or don't really understand how Bitcoin might benefit them. And as we saw that need grow, some members of the community, came together who have experience with those organizations and said, we can put together that kind of content. And so now what we have is sort of a library of modules that any organizational leader can take off the shelf. And if they're wanting to have a conversation with the human resources function at their organization, they can get a module that helps them helps them deliver information for those kinds of audiences. Or if you're talking to the risk, individuals within your organization, or the executives, or if you're talking about different types of verticals and industries that might be affected by Bitcoin. So it's really a great tool, a very modular approach to allowing anybody grab content that's well vetted, well researched, and well written in order to deliver it to those audiences at their particular organization, so that they can, orange pill, if you will, the people in the organization that need to know how Bitcoin can benefit them.
And this is how we do it, right? This is how we orange pill the world. We put together best practices, the best ideas, the best analogies, explanations, package it all together, and then disseminate. And then people can go and teach their own communities, their own families, their own friends. And it is through that, not only the good information, but also the trust that you have in those that are close to you, that we can really spread Bitcoin faster than ever with these grade A materials. And really love what Me Premier Bitcoin is doing. I think it's so awesome that you have taken such a big role and responsibility with it yourself, and making sure that you use your experience as a teacher, your decades of experience, to help them and push this initiative forward. So yeah, this is all happening in El Salvador, November. They're having Bitcoin Week starting, I believe, the 13th of November. There's the Adopting Bitcoin Conference. There's the Bitcoin Economia meeting in Berlin. There's, of course, stuff going on at Bitcoin Beach in El Zante. So everything you could ever want in terms of Bitcoin education, learning, conferences, networking, really going to be quite the time in El Salvador. It's my first time in 3 years that I will not be attending Bitcoin Week, and I'm sort of sad about that, but I'll be there next year. Absolutely. So yes, Hector, great work there. And we will now turn our attention towards the legal section. So yes, lots of big news coming out this last week over here. And we will start off with this, a hack. So Aikido Security warns of a massive NPM supply chain attack. 18 packages with 2 billion plus weekly downloads were injected with wallet draining code targeting MetaMask and Phantom users. So what does this even mean? So yes, last week there was lots of big headlines and posts over on X about this. And so what happened? A long trusted maintainer named Quix was phished, and 18 popular JavaScript packages, including Chalk, Debug, and ANSI styles, with over 2 billion weekly downloads, were injected with wallet draining code. The malware silently swaps crypto addresses in MetaMask, Phantom, and other software wallets. Users see the correct recipient, but funds are rerouted to attacker-controlled addresses. The compromised packages have already been downloaded over 1 billion times, putting the entire JavaScript ecosystem at risk. So when this first came out, this was pretty scary. Again, people with hardware wallets were not really at risk. You just, of course, have to verify every transaction before you send it. Make sure that the addresses match. But those with software wallets like MetaMask and Phantom were more at risk. However, it seems like at the end of the day, they were only able to get about $1,000 worth of crypto across these billions of downloads that took in this malware. So yeah, Hector, as someone who helps run a Bitcoin wallet and is of course very concerned about security and making sure that your customers have the utmost security there, what is your take on this story, and how should people best protect themselves?
Yeah, so my take on the story is I'm really happy that it seems like the attack was not more successful in terms of its ability to steal people's wealth. I think it's a real wake-up call for people to understand the vulnerabilities that exist and how they need to take steps to secure themselves. We think of we talked about KYC. You mentioned KYC in your opener when you talked a little bit about the Digital Patriot Act story. I think of KYC in a couple of other veins, not just know your customer, but in this case, it's know your counterparty and know your code base, right? Remember, you're trusting. If you're just blindly, sort of accepting transactions from your software, you're trusting that information is accurate. And it is critical that we verify and don't trust. That's part of the Bitcoin ethos, and it's a good reminder to all of us to make sure that we're not getting lax in in sort of our threat model. You mentioned it a minute ago, so some best practices to take away from this is make sure that you're working with air gap wallets. A wallet where you can actually verify the transaction, verify the destination address, verify the change address. That you can do that right on the device, because that's one way that you can completely mitigate, an attack like this. And attacks like this are only going to increase and expand in terms of their number and their sophistication. So making sure that you've got your keys, off the internet, and that you're verifying those addresses on your device is a way to protect yourself. And another thing you can do is stick with Bitcoin only. The fewer coins that your wallet supports, the less of a threat vector that creates. So if you just are dealing with protecting Bitcoin, there are lots of great companies that make devices that are focused just on leveraging some of Bitcoin's, kind of special security capabilities, and it minimizes the attack surface. So for that and the million other reasons that I would advocate you should stick with Bitcoin only, this is just another reason why you should just focus on Bitcoin. And as far as Rhino, we were unaffected by the attack, and part of that is because we are a Bitcoin only company, and so we were using these kind of code snippets that allow for sort of interoperability and the ability to to transmit lots of different kinds of tokens.
Yeah, I think what you said there is so important, is that as time goes on, these kind of attacks are only going to increase. So there's never been a better day to check up on your Bitcoin security, make sure that everything is aligned, do a test transaction, make sure you know how to use your wallet. If you've sent your Bitcoin to cold storage over the last 2 years, right, and haven't moved it out of there, try to move a little bit, right? Make sure you know it, and make sure you have the muscle memory, that you know best practices, so that say there is some hack or something that happens, you need to move your Bitcoin, you know what to do, and you're not going to fumble. You're not going to be scared. It's just like riding a bike. You can very calmly and securely move your Bitcoin if need be. And that just comes with practice and being on top of it. So make sure that you are up to date with the latest Bitcoin security protocols, know what you're doing, and use Bitcoin only wallets and software and hardware, right? Like Rhino. Absolutely. Cool. So before we hop into the next story and the namesake for this edition, I would like to say thank you all very much for tuning in. We are about halfway through the show. We've got over 1,600 people watching live. If you could hit that like button, that share button, go tell your friends and family about this show. We break all the biggest news down into very digestible tidbits. It's a 1-hour show. You get caught up on all the biggest news in Bitcoin in 1 hour, and then you're good to go for the week ahead. You are fully up to date, and that's what we do here at Bitcoin News Weekly. Head over to weekly.bitcoinnews.com, subscribe to the newsletter, get it in your inbox 7 a.m. every Monday morning, and then join us here live. Join the conversation and have some fun with us. New guests every single week, like today's great one. We have Hector, and I really want to get Hector's opinion on this story. So the U.S. Treasury moves to apply the Patriot Act to digital assets. FinCEN director confirms plans to finalize the Mixer rule, which would label common BTC privacy practices as primary money laundering concerns. So this was a big scoop to come out of The Rage. At The Rage Tech, they put out some of the best, specifically Bitcoin tech, Bitcoin privacy articles out there. They're issuing FOIA requests to get information on how much Bitcoin the U.S. Marshals have. They're really on top of their Bitcoin journalism, and this was the big scoop last week. So let's dive into this. We can read a little bit, and of course, this Mixer rule would be a part of the Patriot Act, a law that was signed over 20 years ago in response to, of course, the attacks on 9/11. And it is meant to go after terrorists. However, the definition of terrorists is to be defined by who is in charge at the time. So, could this be turned towards Bitcoin and Bitcoin practices? Last year, under the Biden administration, the Treasury wanted to clarify the mixer rule. And now it seems to have gone through the time where people could make comments. And last year, lots of the biggest Bitcoin companies like Swan, 1031, and Samurai Wallet, before they got into their legal issues, they issued a statement saying that this is a huge attack on Bitcoin privacy, and this should not be put into law. But it seems as if they are now finalizing this mixer rule. And what kind of Bitcoin actions would be considered a violation of this mixer rule? Well, it's things that people do on an almost daily basis with their Bitcoin. Some of these things include pooling or aggregating their cryptocurrency from multiple persons' wallets, addresses, or accounts, using programmatic or algorithmic code to coordinate, manage, or manipulate the structure of a transaction, splitting cryptocurrency or for transmittal and transmitting the cryptocurrency through a series of independent transactions, creating and using single-use wallets, addresses, or accounts, and sending cryptocurrency through such wallets, exchanging between types of cryptocurrency or other digital assets, and facilitating user-initiated delays in transactional activity. So yeah, I mean, especially this one is just absolutely insane. Creating single-use wallets, addresses, or accounts would be considered a violation of this mixer rule. And this is just a whole bunch of bad news. And hopefully with the administration that we have now, this will not come to light. But of course, we as Bitcoiners and owners of cryptocurrency need to make it very clear that this is not what we want to see, and that these financial privacy is a right, and that we must stand up for it, whether it's regular assets or digital assets. So, Hector, I know you've got a thing or two to say about this. I would love your take.
Yeah, well, it's disappointing to see that this didn't just sort of get completely eliminated. That would have been great, right? New administration, new slate. We're not going to infringe on people's privacy, especially their financial privacy. That doesn't seem like that's what's happening. And while it's disappointing, I would say, if you're surprised by this, then you must be new here, because look, government is going to government, and I don't know, did you really think that just because we got the less bad outcome in the last election, that entrenched power was just going to hand over that power back to the citizens? All right. I would remind folks who were, hopeful of this, that remember that it was a Republican administration that gave us the Patriot Act in the first place. And by extension, they're also the ones who gave us the Bank Secrecy Act, which is another law that, that the Patriot Act then leverages for even, more power. So I would probably bring you back to quote, my friend Walker, there is no red, there is no blue, there is the state, and there is you. Right. And so thinking that the government was going to give up power over money willingly is kind of like thinking that the British were going to give up control of the colonies willingly. That's not going to happen. Right. Like Marty Betpred, right. These people are not your friends. And this is why Bitcoin is such a powerful tool, because it finally allows individuals to stop begging for our sovereignty. And it instead allows you to take control over your financial future. So we need to stay vigilant, we need to stay active, and we need to use our voices loudly to push back against this kind of additional creep and infringement on our privacy. So I encourage folks to not just not sleep on this one. This is a serious concern, and we need to let the administration know that, hey, if you're going to consider yourself friends of privacy and friends of freedom, then you need to protect that. And this is an opportunity for them to do so.
100%. There is some silver lining here. They updated the story late on Friday
Yep.
to say that the Special Measures to Fight Modern Threats Act no longer contains an exemption from public notice requirements. So people are going to be able to comment on that as it goes up for debate.
Yes.
And it was additionally updated to reflect public comments on the Treasury's Mixer rule issued by industry groups to expand on the comments made by FinCEN Director Andrea Gacki to include the quote that the rule must be tailored toward illicit activity. So this director, Gacki, she did say that we have to make sure that we tailor any approach here to be really directed at illicit activity. But of course, we know that once the government has the power to go after someone that they don't like, they can label anything that they don't like as illicit activity. So yes, we must be vocal about this. We must stand up, make it very clear. And as the industry groups said last year, the proposed special measures would unreasonably infringe upon the legitimate financial privacy interests of cryptocurrency users and would apply to a variety of digital techniques that are not mixing transactions at all, but rather simply represent good cybersecurity practices. So, yes, I think this ties in well to the last subject that we just said. I mean, be on top of your Bitcoin security and your Bitcoin privacy, and also make it clear to the powers that be that Bitcoin privacy is essential. These politicians don't really like it when you go snooping around their financial transactions and how much money they have. So I think we should have the same right for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's great to see those additional comments coming out, because what I think it represents is a lot of individuals and groups, both in and out of the administration, pushing back hard on these kinds of proposals, and that's exactly what we need, right? We cannot become complacent just because some of these measures have been defeated in the past. This is not the first proposal to attack these kinds of sort of lawful activities. It won't be the last. And each and every time that it's proposed, regardless of who is in charge of the administration, we need to we need to make sure that we are using our voices to let them know that privacy is a basic human right, and that privacy is not an illicit or a criminal activity, and that it's critical for us to preserve that privacy because it's a cornerstone of our democracy.
Yes. And I mean, I think Bitcoiners were a big part of getting the Trump administration elected last November. They certainly donated a lot of money, and there were a lot of promises made by the Trump administration towards the Bitcoin cohort. One of those was, of course, freeing Ross Ulbricht, which happened within a month or so of Trump getting into the White House. But another one that Trump mentioned on the campaign trail, of course, was the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And there was an executive order signed back in March. But since then, it's been sort of moot. We haven't heard much. There hasn't been much movement. And now we have U.S. Representative David Joyce introducing a bill directing the Treasury to study the feasibility of a federal strategic Bitcoin reserve, including custody, security, and accounting, with a report due in 90 days. So we've got a piece on this over at bitcoinnews.com. Of course, check on Bitcoin News every single day for your latest Bitcoin news. And yes, the big thing about this is that it puts fire under some butts, right? 90 days. If this is to go through this bill, they have to report on how much we have, what the plan is to custody this Bitcoin, and the feasibility of it all. So do you think that the strategic Bitcoin reserve is actually going to come to pass, or has the momentum shifted and are we not even thinking about that anymore as a Bitcoin community?
Well, I think a lot of people are still thinking about it. I personally think it will probably happen, whether it's sooner or later. It will. Why? Back to sort of the beginning of some of the notes that we talked about at the beginning. Bitcoin's incentives are simply too strong, right? just like it behooves individuals to protect their time and wealth in better money, it also is going to be the same thing for nation states. And whether we're first or we're somewhere down the road, I think that eventually we're going to recognize that it's going to be necessary for us to maintain our sovereignty as a nation. And the sooner we do it, the better off we're going to be, because there is a first mover advantage in terms of taking advantage of the opportunity of where Bitcoin is at in its adoption cycle. So I don't know when it's going to happen. I do like seeing moves like this because, like you said, deadlines are good. A goal without a deadline is just a wish. So I think this is another good step in that direction. I like seeing that that members of the party in power are continuing to push this, so that we can get some resolution and some movement, and hopefully we'll all benefit from it. So I don't have any inside information here, but it's always good to see the pressure continue to be applied.
Yeah. And it does seem as if it's sort of echoing the way that Bitcoin corporate adoption happened, right? I mean, Strategy came out in 2020, and then Tesla joined, and there was all this great hubbub and hype about it. And then nobody joined for another 4 years. But it wasn't until 2024 when we saw the Bitcoin Treasury company fad start to occur and then really take off in 2025, right? So that was about 4 years it took after the initial player to step their foot into the water towards sort of a mass adoption on a corporate level. And now I think that America sort of mentioned it in 2024, 25, and then it might be a next cycle thing where we see lots of countries sort of dive headfirst into a Bitcoin for the national balance sheet. Though we did see some headlines like Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan last week are looking into strategic Bitcoin reserves. So, and again, it makes sense for these players at the periphery to be the first ones to really jump right in, because they have the least to lose and the most to gain. So I think it's good news that we see these, while the American strategic Bitcoin reserve might be put on the back burner for a little bit, these other smaller countries are continue with the idea. They're moving forward.
Yeah, look, history is littered with stories of the consequences of choosing, choosing the inferior money. Whether it was shells and beads when they ran into gold, or countless other stories. That's not going to change now. So there is a better money, the first, as Michael Saylor would say, engineered money. And it is superior to everything that we've had that's come before that. And the groups, organizations, and nation states who embrace superior technology are going to benefit from it. So the sooner that we recognize that, the better off we're going to be.
100%. And the better off you will be the sooner that you adopt a Bitcoin standard. So right now, I would like to give a big shout out to our main sponsor here over at Bitcoin News Weekly. We have Rhino. Rhino is the all-in-one Bitcoin app built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. What can you do with Rhino? Well, you can buy or sell your Bitcoin instantly, right? You can send sats anywhere on the Lightning Network, and you can withdraw straight to cold storage. So once you're on Rhino, there's lots of options. I've got it right here on my phone. I use it all the time. And what are some things you can do? You can turn your sats right into gift cards right on the app. And if you use Casa for multisig, you can link it as one of your keys in your 3 of 5 multisig right there in the Rhino app. And Rhino is just warming up. Soon you'll be able to pay the bills, borrow against your Bitcoin, and stack for retirement without leaving the app. So go try it out today. Download Rhino at rhinobitcoin.com, or if you're on YouTube, just go down below into the description, click the link. And if you sign up today and use code Bitcoin News, one word, Bitcoin News, Rhino will drop $10 of free Bitcoin into your account. And if you hold that $10 for a couple of cycles, who knows how much that will be in the future, right? So go ahead, secure your stack today with Rhino. It's a great place to buy Bitcoin, store Bitcoin, and you know what? There's so much more coming down the road. So thank you so much to Rhino for making this show possible. And we continue on with the biggest headlines. So, Hector, I want to thank you for taking your time today, for joining us, and being a representative of the wonderful Rhino app. And I now would like to hop into the stories regarding markets. Big news this week is that we could get a rate cut, the first one in a year, since Jerome Powell cut rates by 25 basis points right before the election. Some thought that that might have been a political move to try to gas the markets up a little bit before in Biden's final months. But he's held steady for the last year. As we've seen inflation slow down a bit, but now it seems to be reaccelerating. And we've got markets at all-time highs, right? We've got the stock market, we've got real estate, we've got gold, Bitcoin not far off from all-time highs. And yet, despite this, we've had the president yammering and yammering and yammering, telling Jerome Powell that he is a dumb mule, that he is stubborn, that he has no idea what he's doing, and that he needs to cut ASAP, because he is costing this country trillions of dollars in interest payments. So we've got the biggest banks. JP Morgan says, despite CPI risks, aka inflation, we're going to see a cut this month. We got BlackRock CIO calling for a 50 basis point cut this week. And Morgan Stanley projects that to see steady cuts through 2026, with rates going down to 2.7 to 3%. So, Hector, tell us, what do you think about cutting rates at this juncture? Is this just the fiat death spiral where the interest gets out of control, or we have to use the escape hatch, which is devaluing the dollar?
Yeah, it's unlikely that we're not going to continue to devalue the currency, right? Because it's the easiest, quote, solution to the debt problem, right? We could increase our income. Think about it in terms of your own household, right? If you owe money, if you're in debt, the only way that you're going to get out of that is one of a few ways, right? One is you could increase your income, right? You could get a second job. You could try to bring in more money so you can cover your expenses. Right. Well, in government world, right, we call that taxes, because government doesn't actually produce anything, right? Everything they have is taken from their citizens via taxation. Well, taxes aren't a super popular way to get reelected, so that generally is not the way that they go. The other thing you can do at home is you can cut your expenses, right? Hey, let's stop going out as much. Let's not buy that new car. Well, in government terms, we call that austerity, right? And things like cutting social programs are not a super popular way to get reelected either. And since the incentives of politicians is to get reelected, they typically go for devaluing the currency, because defaulting on the debt is also not a very popular option. So what's going to continue to happen if we continue to spend beyond our means, which we are, and if we continue to have expenses that continue to spiral out of control, which they will, then really the easiest thing is to devalue the currency. So whether the rate cuts are good or how big should the cut be, that is certainly outside of my expertise. But as long as we're in the situation that we're currently in, I think we're going to continue to devalue the currency, and that's why people who understand this, I think, are making the smart decision to get into assets that are being created at a slower rate than dollars are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we saw it this year, right? Elon came in with Doge. They tried to cut. It's supposed to be 2 trillion, then 1 trillion, then 500 billion. Then, I mean, what was it at the end of the day? A couple tens of billions at most. And that is absolutely nothing when you've got a federal government spending close to $7 trillion a year, right? And so where do they come up with this stuff? They've got to print it out of thin air. And because your taxes or my taxes aren't going to cover that hole, right? They take in about $5 trillion a year in taxes. They're spending $7 trillion. There's $2 trillion deficit that they just need to make that gap up with money that they print out of thin air. And every dollar that they print means the dollars in your bank account are worth less. So as Hector said, what do you need to do? You need to get into assets that are being created slower than that. And what is one of those assets? Of course, Bitcoin, with a 21 million absolute supply cap. That means that you will not be diluted or devalued at the whim of a shadowy group of 12 bankers who sit around and determine the price of money. No, the monetary policy of Bitcoin was determined from the day that it was launched on January 3rd, 2009. And since then, we've been witness to this monetary protocol take off and grow and take a life of its own and yet stay the course. And so we are here to preach the idea that the decision of the price of money should not be in charge of man, right? The market should decide this. And the market is doing that on a daily basis with, say, the price of Bitcoin, right? And so as more and more people wake up to this, the network grows, the network strengthens, and you are still able to get an early ticket on this ride of Bitcoin, because we are going much higher than this, folks. And that is where I'd like to take the conversation next. We closed out this edition of Bitcoin News Weekly. Nice little article on Bitcoin to $10 million. There was a great interview of Eric Yates over on What Bitcoin Did, and he laid out his case as to why Bitcoin could hit $10 million within 7 years. Let's take a listen to Eric and see what his reasoning is.
Bitcoin is something that could get to $10 million easily within the next 10 years. If I were to put my money on it, I'd say Bitcoin's going to be at $10 million in probably like 7 years. I think it's going to happen relatively rapidly. And I think everybody's thinking about, well, market structure is changing. We're seeing diminishing returns. All of this is true. But Bitcoin is always and everywhere like one major press release away from a huge change in the perception of it. That's how it's kind of always been. Some large new dynamic comes out and everybody's like, oh my God, BlackRock just stepped into the market. Oh my God, the US government. You know, these things are only becoming increasingly more likely to happen because the narrative around Bitcoin has changed. It has changed within the culture. It's changed within the global zeitgeist. It's being taken seriously as an asset now. It's not some sort of huge reputational risk for you to adopt it anymore. Mm-hmm. So with all of these dynamics floating around in the market, right now there's a bunch of people having conversations everywhere around the world about how they're going to adopt Bitcoin in some way, shape, or form. And everybody's witnessing what's happening in the market, where it's like literally you're creating some of the best performing stocks in the world from just buying Bitcoin and not doing anything.
All right, let's pause it right there. Hector, let's get to your take. $10 million Bitcoin. How long until we're there?
You know, this may not be a super satisfying answer for you, Rob, but the reality is I don't know. I don't know. No one knows, really. You know, Eric's certainly in a better position to know better than I do. But I do think it's definitely going to get there. Now, when and how fast, I really don't know. Why? But why is it going to get there? Because of the things that we were just talking about in the previous segment, right? If you're trying to figure all that out, just try to keep it simple. Think about this. You know, why do houses get more expensive in dollar terms? Well, that's because they're making dollars faster than they're making houses, right? Why is gold getting more expensive in dollar terms? The same reason, right? So instead of spending all of your time looking at, you know, MBRV and SOPR and, you know, MNAV and chart patterns and 1,000 other metrics, just answer this question for yourself every day. Are they making dollars faster or slower than they're making Bitcoin? And if the answer is faster, which, you know, spoiler alert, the answer is always going to be faster, right? Then Bitcoin's going up in dollar terms, you know, forever, Laura, right? You know, it's not magic. It's just math, right? So, you know, think about this. We're supposed to be able to save for the future in money. But because, back to the previous story, because the money has been so manipulated by people trying to centrally plan the price of the most important asset, the most important tool in all of society, money, we can't do that anymore, right? But this idea that you have to invest, right? You have to go further out on the risk curve and buy stocks and hope you pick the right company or whatever it is, that is not the way that you're supposed to be able to save for the future. That's a fallacy of the fiat system that we live in right now. The reality is that all you have to do is spend less than you earn, save the rest in Bitcoin, and then go live your life, right? And it's not about, you know, we talk about Bitcoin as being sort of time and the idea of, oh, hey, if you save, then you're going to get wealthier faster, and then you're going to be able to retire sooner or whatever you want to do. And that may be true, but the reality of the benefit of saving in better money, I think, is more about the time that you get back every day right now. You know, instead of having to spend 30 minutes or an hour of your day saying, you know, did the chart do this and did the Fed do that? And is it a head and shoulders pattern or a cup and handle, or what's the latest, you know, Treasury company or altcoin that I should buy that's going to go on? Instead of doing all of that and spending your time, you can stop. right? You can do more of the things that you love. You can build your business. You can spend time with your family. You can play with your kids. You can go, enjoy the gym, play sports that you like. You can live your life now every single day the way that you want, right? Think about this. 30 minutes a day is about a week a year, right? So just imagine being able to get an extra week a year back because you don't have to waste your time trying to find the next big thing, right? Just saving the best money you can find and go enjoy your life. To me, that's really the power of Bitcoin. So when it gets to 10 million, I don't know. And the reality is I don't care, right? I know that I'm saving in the best money humanity has ever discovered, and that's going to be enough.
We got to clip that. Dude, that was great. I completely agree. Yes. You get your time back today by saving in Bitcoin. As Saifedean always says, when you don't have Bitcoin, you need two jobs. One where you earn fiat and then the other one where you invest it. Bitcoin takes that responsibility of being the vehicle for you to put your money that you earn to store your time that you put into working and contributed to other people's well-being. You get it back in money. You put that money in something that it grows over time, and that's Bitcoin. Pete's got a good question over here. He said, what will 10 million be worth in 7 years? That's a good question, right?
Great question.
If you look at how inflation grows over time, I mean, they're adding about 7% of the money supply each year to the total. So you're definitely $10 million in 7 years is definitely not going to be $10 million today, just as $10 million today is not the same as $10 million pre-COVID, right? I mean, the dollar's already lost 25% of its purchasing power since then. And but if we think about how long is it going to get to $10 million Bitcoin, there's the power law stuff, right? And if you take the most conservative estimates of the power law, it says $1 million Bitcoin by early 2030s, 2033. So about 8 years from that, where Bitcoin will be consistently above $1 million, not just hit it, but stay above that. And then another 10 years on top of that to hit 10 million, right? So you're looking at 18 years or so before $10 million Bitcoin on the power law studies. So there's some realistic numbers there. And I mean, also, but the thing is, if we did see Bitcoin at 10 million within the next 2, 3, 4 years, something would have broken, right? And then if something that big breaks, your daily life is probably going to be very different than what it is right now. So maybe it's best that we wait those a little bit more time to get to.
Maybe. And in the meantime, if you believe it's going to get to 10 million, whether you think that whether your timeline is 3 years or 10 years or 30 years, what the message you can be taking from that I would encourage you to take from that is, who do I have in my life that is not yet saving in this better money, right? Who are the people who I care about, who, even maybe if you've talked with them about Bitcoin in the past, maybe you've talked with them multiple times about Bitcoin in the past, and been frustrated because they didn't, immediately see, the wisdom of your brilliance in terms of how they should save. I know, I have failed many, many, many times with many of the, people who are closest in my life, but you should keep going. You should try again, because if you really do believe in Bitcoin being 1 million or being 10 million, that's great for you. But that's going to be great for you and people who are not saving in Bitcoin, who are still just saving in cash or other inferior vehicles for preserving wealth. They're going to be in worse shape. So you're in great shape, whether it's a year or 10 years from now that it gets to 10 million. But who else can you bring with you into the lifeboat, right? Yeah. Who else can you help to understand? And I would encourage you to maybe redouble those efforts. That time that you're going to get back because you're not having to pay attention to stock charts anymore because you're already saving in better money, maybe use that time to invest in the people who you care about and try to help them understand, and just even start, right? Just even dip a little toe, because we know that once people get that first taste of understanding what Bitcoin can do for them, they generally then tend to go further and further and faster down their journey. So, maybe that's one thing you can consider doing, since your future's already protected. Figure out who else's future you can make better.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Like, who do you want to spend your free time with? Bitcoin is giving you free time. If you spread the word of Bitcoin, you can give the other people you care about free time too, and then you can all share in it. And I still think that this is one of my favorite tools to sort of open the eyes of people to the power of Bitcoin, right? That $1,200 stimulus check back in April of 2020 is now worth $20,000. If you just took that check, invested it in Bitcoin, you'd be up 1,624%. That's powerful. Those are eye-opening numbers, turning 1,200 into 20,000 by just investing it, keeping it there, and holding it over 5 years. You've made quite the return, my friend. And I think those returns are still on the table for Bitcoin, and we will have free time, and we will have free time with each other, with other Bitcoiners, and be able to bask in the glory of it. So yes, Hector, we are nearing the end of our hour here. Thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find out more about you and Rhino, where should they go?
Well, you can find me on, more or less any platform, just under my first name, last name, which is, Hector Alvaro. So whether it's X or, or Nostr or LinkedIn or, wherever you want to find me, feel free to reach out. Again, at my core, I'm an educator. So if you have questions, if there are areas where you're looking for some clarification, I'm happy to try to help in any way I can. And as far as Rhino, just come to rhinobitcoin.com. We've built a terrific tool for you to be able to save and better money and use that money in all the different ways that you might need to in your life. We wanted to build, a one place where you could come and work with Bitcoin and use it and save in it and store it and protect it in all the different ways that you might need to. So check us out. We'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know where we can improve, because we like to focus on listening to our community, listening to our clients, and letting the development of our platform be driven by the things that they need. So tell us how we can be better, and tell us how we're doing.
Yeah. Seriously, if you guys have any questions about Bitcoin in general, Hector is a wealth of knowledge and very generous with his time. A great guy. I've known him for about 3 years plus now, and am always amazed at just how great he is at his explanations, his analogies, his ability to teach and communicate and get ideas across. So any ideas, any questions, hit up Hector. He's an awesome guy. Thank you to you for your time. Thank you to Rhino. If you guys like this stuff, please hit the like button, share it with your friends and family, subscribe on YouTube, share it on X. We're always here every Monday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, breaking down Bitcoin News Weekly. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Until next week.